I'd just like to say, boy, I am sure glad that the FBI spent the last few years spying on all of the Catholic extremists here in this country. Just look at their marches all over the American cities today celebrating the terrorist attacks. Just look at the Catholics marching around celebrating the terrorist attacks that are going on in Israel. Just look at all of them. Oh, yeah, there is none. The FBI, they've spent all of their time investigating Catholics for going to Mass, for going to Latin Mass. And they haven't spent any time investigating the people who are currently supporting the people Hamas. They haven't spent any time investigating those people. We're spying on those people. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. We've got so much to get to today. A couple of local stories I want to hit first, and then we've got to talk a little bit about Hamas. I do want to talk about the ADL director. This is the Anti-Defamation League. This is a leftist guy, okay? And he's a director, and he just completely unloads on MSNBC's attempts to try to humanize Hamas. I talked a little bit about that yesterday. The squad members, Rashida Tlaib, AOC, uh, Cory Bush, Jamal Bowman. Jamal Bowman is the guy who pulled the fire alarm to get out of the to get out of the vote for the continuing resolution. Uh, yeah, so MSNBC has been trying to humanize Hamas, and Joe Biden took a day off yesterday. He stopped doing everything at about noon. He said, let's put a lid on it. I'm not going to be seen for the rest of the day at noon. And there's people dying in Israel. There's Americans who are being held hostage. There's so many different hostages from all kinds of different countries. We've got Canadians, Germans, people from France, and Americans. Now, I've heard conflicting reports. We don't know how many. I don't know exactly the number of Americans that have been killed. The last number I saw was 11. 11 Americans killed in Israel. So we're going to keep you updated throughout the morning here as I get more numbers about how many Americans have died over there. Who knows how many hostages they have? We don't know. Yesterday, they said that they were going to kill for every missile launched in Gaza. They're going to kill a hostage for every missile launched, and they're going to do it live on TV. That's what Hamas said that they were going to do. These people are not human. These people are terrorists, and they do not deserve any kind of empathy. That's exactly what they are. And the ADL director completely unloaded on MSNBC for their attempts to try to humanize these terrorists. He went as far as to say, who's writing these scripts? Because and I said it yesterday. Did Rashida Tlaib write her statement? She came out with a statement, and she was trying to compare the deaths of these Hamas terrorists to innocent civilians. They're not even on the same level at all. And I was like, did Rashida Tlaib write that from the back of the truck that's taking these innocent women and children and parading their naked dead bodies around the streets? I mean, did she write it from the back of the truck? Next, I do want to talk about how the athletes, I guess they're the new slaves. That's according to the ESPN Plus. This is why I don't watch sports. It's nonsense. ESPN Plus, it's a new show on that channel, and it's dedicated to talking about this racism and how athletes are the new slaves. It's really a slap in the face to people who and to those who have ancestors who were enslaved during the 1800s. Uh, but I can't believe that this is actual TV programming. It's a new anti-racism series. I don't understand it. Then a little bit later, I do want to talk about the rabbi. He's a very famous rabbi here in America. He actually calls out Cory Booker. So Cory Booker is a Democrat. I think he's out of New Jersey. Yeah. And he filmed himself, and he was talking about how he supports Israel. He was there in Israel. He quickly got on a plane and got out of there. Don't ask me how he was able to do that, and all of these other American hostages are left there to die. to be killed live on television, but Cory Booker got out of there, of course. But he's saying that he supports Israel. Do not pay attention to their words. They can say all the things, they can release all the statements they want. Pay attention to their actions. Because this guy, Cory Booker, he actually gave and voted to give Iran $150 billion. So we're going to be talking a little bit about those stories. Like I said, a couple local stories I wanted to get to today. First, Bloomington Police Department, they put something on their Facebook page that kind of caught my attention about the fentanyl crisis and about this recent spike in overdoses. So we're going to get to that next. The presidential candidate, Vivek Ramaswamy, he was in Michigan. He actually slammed the plans for this Goshen electric vehicle lithium battery plant set to be built here in Illinois, Manteno, Illinois. I actually grew up right outside of Manteno, Illinois. My parents, we used to drive and go get the corn. We had the field there and worked with our farmer to get the corn, and we sold it back at the corn stand in my hometown. But Manteno, Illinois, there's this lithium battery plant that's going to be popping up here, and we're trying to stop it. The Illinois residents, they're opposed to this. People on the left and right. This is bipartisan. This is not uh, Republican opposition. This is not conservative opposition. People are opposed to this plant coming to Manteno, Illinois. Those on the right and left for different reasons, but it's a bipartisan issue. So Vivek Ramaswamy, he was in Michigan and he was at this rally and he was at the proposed site in Michigan. So they're trying to build one. Goshen is the company. They're trying to build one in Michigan and they're trying to build one here in Illinois. And we're not having it. And Vivek Ramaswamy actually slammed those plans for Goshen to build these battery plants here in the United States. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about that as well. So Bloomington, police, they put on it was like a Facebook post, and they said that they saw a recent spike in overdoses as the fentanyl crisis continues to have an effect on communities both big and small. Okay, so we're having an issue with fentanyl overdoses here in your community. See, this is elections matter. Close the border. The Bloomington police, their Facebook post states that there have been 9 reported overdoses and 3 deaths caused by overdoses in just the past 2 weeks. So there's been a lot of overdoses. So 9 reported overdoses and 3 deaths caused by those overdoses. So 9 people overall. Of those 9, 3 of them died. So that's so tragic. I'm sure, and I say this all of the time, you or somebody you know have dealt with a drug overdoses, drug addiction of some kind. And it's tragic. McLean County is currently at 18 drug related deaths for this year. Let that sink in for a minute. 18 McLean County people, your neighbors, your friends, your community. 18 of them are dead because of fentanyl. So the Bloomington police, they are advising people who witness an overdose to call 911 immediately. Illinois, they actually have this drug overdose immunity law. I actually don't agree with that law, but it is what it is. You definitely, yes, call somebody. You need to call 911 immediately if you start to see somebody dying in front of you. I don't understand why you wouldn't. Uh, but this law that we've got in Illinois, it provides immunity from arrest and prosecution for many drug possession crimes. I think that's why we're where we're at. It's almost like the snake eating its tail, right? This is probably why we have so many drug overdoses, is because we have laws in the books that provide immunity when people take illegal or illegal drugs. But yeah, that's just me. I think that this is kind of a defeating law. If you know that you won't be prosecuted for using drugs, uh, then what stops you from using drugs? But if you call the police, you're going to get immunity. That's a law that we have here in the state of Illinois. You can't be arrested, prosecuted for many drug possession crimes. Not all of them, but most of them, right? If you call in an overdose, you're going to be Okay, you're probably gonna get immunity of some kind. So call 911 if you see somebody overdosing, or if you're witnessing an overdose. Bottom line, we need to close the border. In 2021, the most recent year of complete data, and I've given you this data before, 48,830 people have died from gun-related injuries, okay? 48,000 people have died from gun-related injuries in the United States. And we've banned guns. How does that make sense? Okay. And now, according to the CDC, I'm getting the statistics from the CDC, also in 2021. Compare the 48,000 people dying from gun related injuries, uh, compare that to 106,699 drug overdose deaths in the United States. So, here in the state of Illinois, what's our response to gun crime? What's our response to people dying from gun related injuries? Ban guns. That we're already doing that. We've banned, there's no a so-called assault weapons ban. It bans guns that have over, what is it, 15 rounds or something like that. And it was upheld by our Illinois Supreme Court. You would think that the response to the drug overdose dose deaths would be, oh, I don't know, ban drug overdose. If you're caught with drugs, you should be prosecuted with those drugs from having those drugs. They're banned, right? They should be illegal. But as I just told you, we have things like immunity law, and actually, drug related deaths far exceed gun related deaths. As I just told you, I told you the stats from 2021. That's the most complete data we have. But you never hear progressives say anything about closing the border, uh, banning drugs, being tough on crime when it comes to drug possession. No, no, no. You never hear progressive talk about that. Instead, they open the floodgates and they cry about gun control. That's what they do. But the real reason the left refuses to connect the dots between the fentanyl crisis and the border crisis is because they would have to admit that that border is open and that Joe Biden sucks. And they don't want to do that. So, what is the progressive solution for the fentanyl crisis? Well, I told you things like immunity law and things like Narcan. No big deal. Go ahead. You'll get immunity if you do illegal drugs. And hey, you just need to carry around some Narcan. So, our response to the fentanyl overdoses in the state of Illinois is some sort of immunity law. There has been legislation. I just don't know where we're at when it comes to that legislation on Narcan, providing Narcan to people. New York's latest advice to combat the fentanyl crisis is for everyone to carry Narcan. There's been legislation. The health department has made a recommendation. Now, they made a recommendation after a 2-year-old boy was killed on fentanyl at a daycare in the Bronx. So he just overdosed on fentanyl. I don't know how it happened, but they came out the city with a 12% jump in overdose deaths last year in New York City. They have a 12% jump. The health commissioner there said in a press conference after the toddler, the 2-year-old, died in this drug death, everybody should be carrying Narcan. That was her response to this. Narcan has to be everywhere, this health commissioner in New York said. She goes, we have defibrillators behind every bar, in every business, and in every public event. Increasingly, we have more EpiPens in public settings. Right, because fentanyl overdoses, they're totally the same thing as an allergic reaction to peanuts. No, carrying around Narcan is not the answer to this. What she really meant to say was that we're not going to do anything to stop this. You have to accept that this is the inevitable, just like a peanut allergy. There's nothing we can do. People are going to use fentanyl, and that's the norm. And now we're going to carry around Narcan. Oh, and we're also going to give you immunity if you do illegal drugs. I just don't. I just don't agree. I think that we need to close the border and be tough on drug crime. There you go. All right, I do have to take a break. When we come back, Vivek Ramaswamy, he was in Michigan and he slammed the plans here for the Goshen electric vehicle lithium battery plant that's planned for Manteno. And I've been seeing, so no major Illinois media has been covering this, which a total blackout on this story when it comes to this Goshen plant coming to Manteno, which I think is hilarious. But I love the phrasing that JB uses, that Governor JB Pritzker uses. He continues to call this, not backed by the CCP, or they'll say that, alleged ties with the CCP. No, this company is the CCP. I'm sick and tired of people saying that, alleged ties with the CCP, backed by the C. No, this company is the CCP. It's written right there in their bylaws. The, their main goal is to serve the Chinese Communist Party. Hey, good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. When I hear any of these squad broads speak, I wonder, does the Democrat Party realize what they've allowed to infiltrate the party? Do they actually realize what these people are saying, what they're doing? Yeah. Well, thanks so much for the comment, Jacqueline. I appreciate you listening. And if you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. As I told you guys a little bit about yesterday, the squad members, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Cory Bush. Oh gosh, I'm missing a lot of them. Uh, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman was out there. And these people, these squad members, came out and they tried to equate Israeli citizens, their deaths, to the Hamas deaths. And, there's a reason why. And it's all really orchestrated and planned. And I know that we like to say Kamala Harris is stupid, but she's really not. She goes out there and she says what she has to say in order to start to really just, sprinkle in this narrative, the root causes, root causes, root causes, root causes. So that's something that the Democrat Party has been trying to say is that this is the root cause of this is that the Palestinians are oppressed and that they are being occupied by the Israelis. That's just not true. First of all, second of all, we know that to not be true, and it's very clear because have you heard of the Israelis bombing Gaza just in the dead of night or by surprise? Have you heard of Israelis and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Netanyahu. Say that 10 times fast. Have you ever heard of them actually uh, committing these terrorist attacks on them first? No, because they're not actually oppressed. And the way I try to compare this is look at what's going on here in the United States. They'll continue it, like the AOC and the squad members. What they'll say are, there's victimization going on in the Black community. They'll sit there and they'll say, and there's danger in that. There's an extreme danger in telling somebody that they're a victim when they're not actually a victim. Okay. There's an extreme danger in telling people that they're victims. In fact, most people who are actual victims, and my brain goes to the, sex victims, sexual assault victims, counselors, people who are trained in trying to provide support and resources to those who undergo atrocities in this country, sexual assault, sexual harassment, things like that. Counselors are actually trained to say that they're not a victim, okay? And that's called empowering somebody and getting them out from underneath this weight of victimhood, okay? So they're actually supposed to uplift people who are actual victims, and they will never call a victim an actual victim because that victimizes them even further. You understand what I'm saying? There's a danger in calling somebody a victim, okay? And that is why people like John Sandage here in this community, and I equate it to this. Um, this is a very small comparison. Sharon Chung, she was allegedly, well, she was talking to family members of people who were in the jail and talking about how this jail was not serving the inmates uh, in all of the ways like they weren't doing right by the inmates. They were oppressing the inmates, if you will. They were treating the inmates poorly. That there was, some sort of abuse going on or neglect going on within the McLean County Jail. And there is a huge issue when you when you lie and when you try to tell somebody that they're a victim, especially when they're in an inmate setting. So there could have been things like riots. There could have been lashing out at the correctional officers. That was why that was such a big deal for John Sandage. She was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! You have a McLean County board member." She was a McLean County board member at the time, and she's going out there and telling the inmates that they're victims when they're not. And this is this is the thing. You've enabled them, you've inspired them to revolt in some sort of way when there's no reason for it. That's what's going on in Hamas, right? We have American congresswomen who have said that, oh yeah, the Palestinians, we need to stand by those victims in Gaza. There's a root cause here, and I'm going to play some things from MSNBC if you don't believe me. That's the narrative that these Democrats are showing, that these people in Hamas have been victim to occupation, oppression by the Israelis, and that's just not true. And, BLM, I think they're taking note of what's going on in Hamas. We actually saw this or in Israel with Hamas. We saw this a little bit in 2020. So we continued to tell people that they were victims when they weren't actually victims. And Chaz happened. So Chaz, I think that was in Seattle. This was an autonomous zone. They broke away from the actual city and they created their own like kind of functioning government. It wasn't to the scale of what Hamas has done and what these terrorists have done. So Palestine actually, if you look at the geographical makeup of the country Israel, you can kind of see it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it doesn't. East or Palestine has broken away from Israel. This is kind of like, and they want their, their own country or whatever, and they want their sovereignty. Um, and then from the Palestinians has created more factions. So there have been Hamas. There's another terrorist organization. These are terrorists who run Palestine. Okay, so Palestinians and Hamas, they are the same thing. Same thing. They're just a little bit more radical. There might be some innocent people in Palestine. Um, but yeah, Hamas runs all of it. So make no mistake, it's the same. Uh, I'll be right back. Hold on. You can always be a part of the show by texting in 309-451-9299. Check out Kat Peterson on YouTube. That's me, Kat Peterson 929. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can always visit us at cities929.com. Check us out on Facebook. If you have a question, throw it into the comments section. I really like this. Jacqueline, she comments here and she says, anytime I hear of these squad broads speak, anytime I hear them speak, I wonder if the Democrat Party realizes what they've allowed to infiltrate their party. And I'm going to get to that here in just a second because the ADL, this is the Anti Defamation League. This is a leftist organization. He's the director of this leftist organization. He just completely unloads on MSNBC. And MSNBC, much like the squad members, have humanized Hamas. They're trying to say that these terrorists are humans, that they're humans too, and they're equating the deaths of these innocent Israeli citizens, these women, these children, the elderly. They're trying to equate those deaths to the deaths of the Hamas terrorists, those who were killed by the Israeli soldiers. So the Israeli soldiers are attempting to wipe out Hamas. They're defending themselves, and they are killing Hamas terrorists. And we're trying to equate the squad members are trying to equate those deaths to that of the Israeli citizens who are innocent. And this ADL director, he just completely unloads on MSNBC for doing that. I don't know. I think that the Democrat Party, I'm just going to say it, wanted this to happen. It's very clear that they didn't care about the possibility of this happening. And I'm going to get into it because $150 billion given to Iran. Iran is Palestine, Hamas. These are radical terrorists. Iran has has a long history of provoking Israel, has a long history of attacking Israel. And one of the most famous rabbis here in America, where he's actually calling out a Democrat for saying that he supports Israel. And we should call out all of these Democrats for saying that they support Israel, Joe Biden too, because they don't vote that way and they don't act that way. They don't act like they actually support Israel. Okay. It's a lot of virtue signaling. And they continue to vote for things that like $150 billion to Iran. Joe Biden in this botched hostage deal, he gave $6 billion to Iran, which subsequently uh, enabled Hamas to commit this act of terror during one of their treasured holidays, the Jewish people, the Festival of Tabernacles. This was during a Jewish holiday. This was a surprise. Israelis have never done that. They don't go around shooting teenagers in the back. That's not normal. And my point here is that their actions speak way louder than their words. You can say you support Israel until your face is blue, Joe Biden. I don't believe you. You want to know why? Because you took the day off yesterday. You gave $6 billion to Iran when you didn't have to. This was a hostage exchange. Okay. We were exchanging hostages with Iran. They took our guys. We had some of their guys. We exchanged our hostages. But then, like, for some odd reason, Joe Biden says, yeah, we'll pay you $6 billion. Iran didn't pay us for their hostages back. We gave them back for our hostages. It was supposed to be just an exchange. And for some odd reason, we just gave them $6 billion. And then they're like, no, that money, it wasn't for Iran. It wasn't for the Hamas attacks. We gave it to them as humanitarian aid. The example I gave yesterday, I got $10 in my pocket. You give me $30. I'm more likely to go buy that ice cream that I've wanted all week if you give me $30, because now I'm like, oh, okay, I have money. I'm able to uh, conduct this terrorist attack because now I have the money, the means to do so. I just, the lies are absurd. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the Anti-Defamation League. But before we took the break, I was telling you about Vivek Ramaswamy. He actually was in Michigan. He's the presidential candidate, primary candidate. He's not going to win, folks. Believe me, he's like 60 points behind President Donald Trump. Donald Trump will be the nominee, but I still like to hear what Vivek Ramaswamy says, just because he's got a different take than most of the people who are running for president on the Republican side of things. He's, has this anti-establishment feel to him. I don't trust him. I just don't. I don't trust him. So he's a presidential candidate slamming the Goshen electric vehicle battery plant that's supposed to come up in Manteno, Illinois. There's one going up in Michigan, and he was at a rally in Michigan, the proposed site for the battery plant to go up there. Now, there's all kinds of lawsuits happening. There's the attorney who's dealing with it in Michigan is also the same attorney that the folks here in Illinois have obtained. They're building legal arguments from the last time I talked with Phil Nagel. He's running for Senate, and his constituency is in that area, Manteno, Illinois, as well, or his uh, potential constituency he hasn't gotten that Senate seat yet. He's running against Patrick Joyce, but Vivek was there, and this is a Chinese owned, and I want to be very clear about that. Goshen is not CCP backed. They are not. There are no alleged ties to the CCP. When you look at Goshen, this company, their bylaws, they actually say in their bylaws that their purpose is to serve the CCP and to serve the party. Okay, that is in their bylaws. It's baked into the way they function as a company, that they are to serve the. And so that means they are the CCP. If they're writing down in their bylaws that, hey, our mission is to serve the CCP, then they're the CCP. So they're set to get like $8 billion worth of taxpayer subsidies when you take the money from federal taxpayers and the state The state subsidies, and you combine them, it's $8 billion. It's kind of funny because the cost of this plant is only going to be $2 billion to build. Tell me how that makes sense. But uh, this is what Vivek Ramaswamy said at the rally. He goes, the top objective of the next United States president has to be to declare independence from communist China. That is a declaration of independence uh, of our century, and we cannot depend on the enemy for our modern way of life. And uh, the shoes on our feet and the phones in our pocket, we can't depend on China for our modern way of life, the way we dress, the phones in our pocket. We can't. And Goshen's Michigan plans are nearly identical for the plans here in Manteno, Illinois. And we're not going to let it happen in Illinois, just like we're not going to let it happen in Michigan. This is what Vivek Ramaswamy told this Michigan crowd. And these opponents, they're livid. And the town is overwhelmingly opposed to this Goshen plant in Manteno, Illinois. Manteno has a nice little place in my heart. It's like 20 minutes from where I grew up. The plant is to be manned by allegedly American workers. Now, this is really funny. So, I'm talking with somebody. I'm working things out and trying to plan a move, and I'm trying to sublet my place. And this woman is coming from Mexico, and she signed on to this contract with Rivian for I think about 5 years or something like that, which is fine and dandy. And she's a really nice gal. I'm not ripping on her or anything, but that's the thing about these big companies, okay? They say it's American workers only, where, these are good jobs. That's what they say. And then they outsource those jobs. And then they have people from other countries come in and sign 5-year contracts with them. So this whole thing about the housing crisis in McLean County, they're like, oh, well, we have to plan for all of these employees. See, here's the thing. I don't think that the McLean County residents are actually getting these jobs. And I'm just asking questions here because why in the world would there's McLean County residents who might want those Rivian jobs. Yes. Why in the world would we give it to somebody who doesn't even live in the country, who has to fly in? I mean, she's flying in, right? She's flying in to get this job at Rivian. And I just don't understand that at all. And I would have a feeling that these jobs that Goshen says, I think there's about 2,000 of them. I don't know if they're exactly going to go to Americans. Who knows? There's a mass exodus from Illinois, and more people are moving every single day from the state of Illinois. Taxation is quite literally the reason. Every time I ask somebody, "Hey, why are you leaving the state?" they say taxation. Uh, who knows? Chinese nationals from Goshen are undoubtedly going to be overseeing the construction, the management of this plant. And I don't know if those jobs are going to go to Illinois residents. I don't know if they're going to go to Americans. But yeah, the national press, they're beginning to talk about this Goshen plant. We're finally seeing it. News Nation, Fox, they've covered it. The New York Times covered it. The Michigan press, they have multiple stories on this daily. But here in Illinois, the major Illinois media, total blackout on the story. Wirepoints.org, they're covering the story, but nobody else really is covering the Goshen plant. And I just find that incredible. Center Square, they're covering it. But no major Illinois news organization is covering this. There's a complete blackout on this. And the Goshen supporters here, they're dismissing this as some sort of form of xenophobia or the Red Scare, which is absurd because the Biden administration and top Democrats have been among the most hawkish. At least that's what they say, right? They say that they're calling for higher or tighter restrictions on Chinese business activity here in the United States. The Biden administration and top Democrats have said that they're trying to tighten up Chinese business activity here in the United States. Environmental issues are now emerging because of this Goshen plant, battery and other battery projects. And this is making the issue bipartisan, much like the carbon pipelines that are planned to go from Iowa to Illinois to Kansas, who knows, to Nebraska, all throughout the Midwest. These carbon pipelines, it's carbon sequestration. A lot of leftists agree with me that that's not good for the planet. Okay, now that's creating a bipartisan issue. This is not good for the planet. This Goshen Battery Company, it's not good. Does Mantino have the capacity to deliver 500,000 gallons of water per day, which is what this Michigan plant, the Michigan project, is expected to consume? Okay, so we know that they need 500,000 gallons of water per day, this Goshen plant. Are they going to be able to provide that? Or is Mantino going to have the capacity to do that? The infrastructure. Where's the wastewater going to go? What kind of container is it going to be in? How are they going to get this wastewater out of the plant? Will the local fire department be prepared for special firefighting needed for particularly hot lithium fires? We know because of the Olympia High School catching on fire. A lot of these solar plants or solar industrial farms or whatever they call them, industrial plants. I want to call them that. They're not solar farms. They don't produce anything. Just look at it, and just look at the numbers. If you don't believe me, solar energy doesn't produce nearly as much as electricity, as much as coal um, does, or natural gas. But the fires that these things create, it's hard to get these fires um, to stop. And then another question I've got is, where's all the concern about the ESG investing? Environmental social governance. Okay, that's what ESG stands for, to which Illinois claims to be dedicated to. Okay, so where's all the concern about ESG investing? So we're supposed to be investing in things that are environmentally good, socially awesome, right? Uh, this is not good for the environment. And I thought Illinois was supposed to be dedicated to investing in environmentally good things. I got questions. These are questions that need to be answered. These are great questions. Uh, I gotta be back. I gotta take a break. But when I come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the Anti Defamation League, the director there roasting MSNBC because they're trying to humanize the terrorists, the Hamas terrorists who have uh, been strike or have launched missile strikes. I think it was like 5,000 into Israel over the weekend. So I'm going to be back next. Hey, good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. Guys can always comment and hit the subscribe button. If you're watching right now, go ahead and smash the like button. Ryan McKinsey says no company with any ties to China should be allowed to do business here, period. May hurt for a while, but eventually we'll depend on ourselves. We can make everything China makes. True. And we'll do it. We'll do it in a very humanitarian way. Okay. So there was this huge story that came out, and I forget the name of the company, but I'll never forget it. The CCP. When people ask me, Kat, why are you so against the CCP? Well, what reason do you want? There's a plethora of reasons why we shouldn't do business with China. But the one reason that I like to point out, and you guys can look up the story, it's true. The place that makes the iPhone, okay, and I don't know the name of the company. It's not the iPhone, it's not Apple, but I think that they make actual phones for Americans, okay, and little kids make the phones for Americans. They've got tiny little fingers, and they really do the whole slave labor thing in China, the child slave labor. But there's this big company, huge skyscraper where they're building the phones, and it's this big building. And they actually had to put suicide nets around this building because the people hate their lives so much in communist China that they want to jump out. They want to jump out of the building and kill themselves rather than work anymore. That's they don't have things like unions, let me tell you. They don't have things like OSHA over in China. Okay, they don't give a rat's ass about their employees. Okay, their employees, even the children that they force to work for them, to create this production or to create these products, such as our cell phones, our Nike shoes, right? But they jump out and they actually have these suicide nets to catch them. So even in CCP, the land of CCP, the land of Communist Chinese Party China, okay, the land there, they won't even allow you to kill yourself. You can't do anything. Okay, they won't even allow you to kill yourself and allow you to jump out of a building. They put up suicide nets to catch the people, so that way they could dust them back off and say, "All right, you had your fun jumping out of this building that's 20 stories high. Now let's get back to work." Okay. So there's so many issues with having that kind of company come to the United States and having that kind of ideology come to the United States. We have borders for a reason, physical borders to protect us. But we also have borders to say, hey, your culture is much different than that of ours here in the United States. Here in the United States, we don't have suicide nets around our industries. We don't have suicide net. We don't force children to build cell phones. Okay, you can't get a job here in the United States until you're 16 years old, and if you want to get a job at 15 years old, then you got to get a work permit. Okay, that's a law. That's understood. That's our culture. We do not enslave children for work, for working purposes. The CCP does not believe that. That's an ideology they have. They think that it's okay to force children to work 14 hours a day, 15, 20 hours a day, 24 hours a day. They're evil people. So, yeah, and I love how you said no company with any ties to the CCP. Ties to the CCP and the CCP. So Goshen is not even tied with the CCP. That's one thing I really want to just drive home is that they are not even tied with this. They are the CCP. So, I mean, I'll pull up their bylaws. Their bylaws actually say that, hey, we need to ensure that everything we do furthers the party and progresses the party, and we need to make sure that we're serving the CCP. They refer to the party in their own bylaws, so this means that they are not tied with the CCP, but they're actively the CCP, like, they are the CCP. I'll be back. You can always see me live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Rumble. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's Cat Peterson 929. You can always comment too and be a part of the show. I love when you guys text in and when you comment. I've got a commenter here. She says, to your water question about the battery plant and the water. So, my water question here about the Goshen plant. I think that Michigan, they've projected the plant that's supposed to go there, this Goshen. It's a lithium battery for electric vehicles. That's what they're going to produce for the Chinese Communist Party. Because in their bylaws, the Goshen company says that everything they do is to further the cause of the party. Okay, so that's written in their own bylaws. The company, it's not alleged ties, it's not ties with the CCP. They are the CCP. In their own bylaws, they say that, hey, the goal of our company is to further the party. Okay, so that means that they are the actual CCP. And I just had the question, there's environmental issues still emerging for Goshen and other battery projects, and the environmental issue. This is making it a bipartisan issue, this Goshen battery plant. People don't like it on the left and right. It's not good for the environment, this Goshen battery plant. So, uh, does Mantino really have the capacity to deliver 500,000 gallons of water per day, which is what the Michigan project is expected to consume? So, there's going to be a lot of water coming in to this facility that's supposed to go up in Mantino. So, this commenter, she says, to your water question, Gibson City ethanol plant gets water from Paxton uh, because Gibson can't support it. So they might have to do something like that. That's a good answer. And these uh what they might have to get it from somewhere else. That might just be what has to happen in Mantino. These are questions that I want answered, and then the next question would be, where's that wastewater going to go? What is it going to be carried in? Is there a risk of that wastewater leaking out and infecting the water system and infecting our water supply, right, in Mantino, Illinois. So, yeah, lots of questions. Thanks for commenting. 309-451-9299. I got to take another break. I swear I'm going to be back and we are going to talk about the ADL director. This is the Anti Defamation League. This is a leftist organization. This is not by any means a far right guy. He came out and he was like blasting MSNBC because MSNBC, and I've got the receipts here, they've been humanizing Hamas. They've been siding with the terrorists. And I got to tell you about Joe Biden taking a day off yesterday. So he just called it quits at noon. And I think he probably was, eating his maple oatmeal in front of the TV, watching some cartoons or something at noon yesterday. But who's writing the scripts at CNN? Because if I had to guess, I would say the Hamas terrorists themselves are writing the scripts for MSNBC. We're going to be back on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz. Hey, folks, if you're watching, go ahead and smash that like button. We're going to be back talking a little bit about the ADL director. It's barbarian what these people are doing. They're raping people, they're brutalizing women, they're killing children in front of their parents, and it's truly tragic that we have people here in America. And I shared with you yesterday that there's all kinds of protesters, I guess, supporters of Hamas in places like San Francisco, New York City, right outside of the Washington, D.C. Capitol. They were there supporting Hamas. They were dancing, celebrating the attacks on the Israeli people and the terrorist attacks that happened during Shabbat, during a Jewish holiday. It was the Feast of Tabernacles, I think it was, or Festival of Tabernacles. But this guy, his name's Jonathan Greenblatt, and he's by no means some sort of right winger or anything like that. He actually blasted Joe Scarborough, who was it? Al Sharpton was there, and he just said, "Look, I'm sick and tired of people glossing over the fact that these people are terrorists, and they're not fighters, they're not militants, they're terrorists." Okay, he called them for what they were. He looked directly into the camera and he said that these people are terrorists. So I do want to talk about that here on the other side, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Barack Obama has yet to condemn the horror in Israel, and that Joe Biden, he put a lid on it before noon. So he was done yesterday. He was not talking to anybody after noon yesterday. For right now, I don't see anything on his calendar, his schedule. I thought he might have warbled his way up to behind the podium and address the nation on this issue, the attacks on Israel, but he has yet to do that. So watch what they do, not what they say. So Joe Biden, he can release all the statements he wants that says that he's in support of Israel, but the $6 billion to Iran says different. The $150 billion that I'm going to get to here, where a bunch of Democrats and including Cory Booker, they voted on $150 billion to go to Iran. You can sit there and say that you're in support of Israel. That's alleged support. Okay. I'm going to say that's alleged support. You can say it until you're blue in the face. That does not mean you support Israel. Joe Biden shouldn't have given that $6 billion. And I'm actually going to play. Trump called it in August of this year. He said, look, this $6 billion that we just gave to Iran in this hostage exchange deal, it was a terrible deal. I don't understand how we won in that deal at all. Yeah, we got our hostages back, some of them, and then we gave back some of their hostages. Supposed to be an exchange, but Joe Biden, he like said, "Well, thanks so much. Here's $6 billion." What? Um, it was a terrible deal, and Trump he said that that $6 billion, he said, "Make no mistake, that's gonna be turned around, and they're going to attack Israel with that money." He called it in August of this year. So he called it before it happened, in October of this year. So we're gonna play Trump's comments from, what was it? Uh, August 17th, 2023, and I'm gonna just click my Trump is right button. I've got it right here in studio. I'm gonna click it, and it's gonna play the audio of Trump being right yet again. Go ahead, smash that like button. We're gonna be back in just a second. So I don't think it's a coincidence that Barack Obama has yet to condemn the horror in Israel, and Joe Biden, he called it yesterday at noon. He goes, I'm done for the day at noon. He took the day off. Okay, at noon he left, and he put a lid on it before noon, actually a little bit before noon. But watch what they do, not what they say. Joe Biden, you can release all the statements you want that you're pro Israel, that you support Israel. You can even do some posturing, send out the aircraft carrier to the Eastern Mediterranean Sea, do some posturing. I don't believe you. You want to know why? Because you gave $6 billion to Iran. And I'm actually going to hit my Trump is right button here in just a little bit on the other side of this break. I'm going to hit my Trump is right button because in August of this year, Trump called it. He said that that $6 billion was going to be used against Americans and it was going to be used against Israelis. And he called it uh, a couple of months before it even happened, the terrorist attack. So I'm going to be touching on that a little bit. Also, Jonathan Greenblatt, he's the ADL director. This is a leftist, okay? And he went on MSNBC and he was ripping into the network because what they've been doing is just glossing over the fact that these Hamas terrorists are actually terrorists. They call them things like fighters. They say that both sides have blame in the game, that the Israelis have blame, that Hamas has blame, and they're trying to equate Israeli deaths to the Hamas terrorists dying at the hands of the Israeli soldiers. And I'm sorry, but they are not on the same level. And this guy is calling it out, and he's a leftist. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. If you're watching, go ahead and smash that like button. We are going to be getting to this, but I the fact that the Anti Defamation League director coming out on MSNBC and calling the network pathetic for their attempts to humanize Hamas and act like both sides are to blame. Okay, because we know that Rashida Tlaib, AOC, Cory Bush, we had Bowman. I'm trying to think of Ilhan Omar. They all came out yesterday and they had statements that were all very similar to each other's. These people are like non-player characters, the things in the video game where they just have these uh responses ready to go. They have like three different things that they say, and or like one of those dolls that you pull the string and it says the same thing over and over again. That's what I think of when I hear AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar. They just say the same thing. They spin this victim narrative, and it's dangerous. Spinning a victim narrative has actual consequences. So one thing that I wanted to get to today was the the squad and their statements, and then MSNBC echoing the same thing that um they're echoing the same thing that the squad members are saying. So Jonathan Greenblatt, he gets on it with the Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough, and he he talks about how the network is calling these people fighters, and they're not actually calling them terrorists. They're not militants, they're not fighters, they're terrorists, and that's what Hamas is. So he looks directly into the camera and talks about the barbarian practices of these Hamas terrorists. And the irony of all of this is that Greenblatt, he's sitting next to, while he's looking into the camera, telling people, look, don't listen to MSNBC. Don't listen to these hacks who are writing these scripts. He goes, um, yeah, Hamas, they're terrorists. They're not militants. They're not fighters. These are not, they're not, Israeli deaths are not equal to Hamas terrorist deaths. And the irony of all of this is that Greenblatt, he's sitting next to Sharpton, and he's an anti-Semite who is a paid contributor of MSNBC. While in Congress, which is so funny, Joe Scarborough introduced and sponsored a resolution condemning Al Sharpton for his anti-Semitism. Now, Al Sharpton sits up there as a paid commentator on Joe Scarborough's MSNBC morning show. Okay, so that just should show you how these people, they are so unconvincing. Okay, when they sit there and say that they're pro-Israel, they're not. Okay, they're so not, and shame on anybody who says, "Oh, at least Joe Biden came out with the statement." Shame on you. Look at the receipts. Look at what he's done. Look at the actions leading up to this. So I'm going to play some examples from MSNBC, the stories that they've done so far since the terrorist attacks over the weekend. I think it was on Saturday. They launched missiles into a music festival. They launched missiles on Shabbat, which is a sacred time for them. They also launched it during their holiday festival. And so this is tragic. The way that MSNBC has been covering it. Actually, Illinois residents were asked some questions about this, and you won't believe what they say about Little Palestine. That's what it's called in Illinois. So we actually have a town, Palestine, Illinois. It's a little village in Illinois. I think the population is like, let me look, 85,000. That's the Little Palestine, is a village in Crawford County. So we're gonna be talking about those Illinois residents. They were actually questioned, by MSNBC about how they feel on the matter. And I mean, a lot of these residents told MSNBC that Hamas has no choice but to rape, torture, and abduct teenagers, infants, elderly, because the they were provoked. Okay, they were provoked by the Israelis. Lie. But this reporter, this hack, this corporate journalismer, she goes, and I'm feeling the overall feeling here is pain. And I haven't watched much of the cable news TV this morning, but most likely what they're going to be talking about a lot today is Matt Gaetz and how he's anti-democracy and the speaker's race. Most likely that's what they're going to be talking about. They're not going to talk about Joe Biden's incompetence and the lack of empathy. That's just a guess I have. That's what they're going to be talking about. So, I also need to tell you about the high-ranking Israel Defense Forces commander and him telling Newsweek that the American weapons that were left behind during Joe Biden's Afghanistan withdrawal are now being used in the Hamas attack on Israel. Shocking, I know, but the attack has left hundreds dead, including Americans. I think the last number I saw was 11 Americans dead. Um, the bitter irony is that Joe Biden said that this would happen in 2007. So it's not my words, um, but it's Joe Biden who said, "Hey, these weapons are going to be used um, to attack Israelis." I like this. I like this. I'm going to address this here on the other side. What are your feelings on RFK Jr.? RFK Jr., what are your thoughts, Kat? Climate change lockdowns, fracking bans, taxpayer funded abortions. Yeah, that's what RFK is for. Yeah, sure, he's good on Fauci for sure. But don't expect anything beyond that with RFK Jr. And he has announced that he's going to be running as an independent. Here's my concern, folks, is that Donald Trump, he definitely resonates with working class folks. And believe me, this election is going to be determined by you and those in the Rust Belt and, the forgotten Midwest. This is a very crucial vote for Donald Trump. Hey, these are the working class, the blue collar workers who feel like the Democrat Party has abandoned them. This is a very important vote, and my concern is that they're going to go with RFK Jr. over Donald Trump. I'm not worried about Republican voters. They're going to be voting for Donald Trump. I'm not worried about these hard R's. I'm worried about these independents and these Democrats that feel like they've been abandoned by the Democrat Party, and they might go for an RFK Jr. just simply because he claims to have been a Democrat prior to becoming an independent. And here's the thing that bothers me so much about third parties, like these libertarians, independents, you will never get, like, they just won't. They will never get the percentages that they're looking for, okay, for ballot access. They're never going to get it. And you're taking away votes from the guy that we're supposed to have in office. Okay, the guy that should rightfully be in office. He had the 2020 election stolen from him. But also, you're just taking votes away from the guy that is going to win. Okay, so or and if he gets enough of this percentage, if he gets enough of that percentage, then we're in trouble because then Joe Biden wins. If he takes enough votes away from Trump, because RFK Jr. is not going to be taking away votes from Joe Biden, okay, or whoever the nominee is. These Democrats, their base, they will vote for that nominee. However, the vote that Donald Trump needs to get, these are the Democrats that are on the cusp of changing to Republican and are changing the way they vote. They might go for RFK Jr. because they're not ready to vote for a Republican. I think that and I'm sorry, I'm not for any of the issues that RFK Jr. really stands on, other than he's really good on Fauci, and he probably will hold Fauci and Big Pharma accountable, and I'm all for that. Yes, especially because now we've got Dick Durbin, Dickie, of the senator of Illinois, looking to regulate supplements through the FDA. And that's super concerning. So your things like vitamin C, vitamin D, magnesium, creatine, right? These supplements that you take, I'm sure I take them every day. We've got a Democrat push to try to regulate those supplements. So they really want to take your health out of your hands and just give it to Big Pharma and give it over to the government. But RFK, he's for things like taxpayer funded abortion. Are you for taxpayer funded abortion? Probably not if you're a Republican, or climate change lockdowns, fracking bans. I don't think that the working class is really for these issues either, these blue collar workers in the Rust Belt. Uh, so I would encourage people to actually look at the issues and check off how many things that RFK is actually going to do for you, the working class blue collar worker. So those are my feelings on RFK Jr. I was asked that in the comment section here on YouTube. You can see me live in studio, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. This is the Morning Buzz. We've got so much to get to today. Sorry for my quick tangent on RFK, but the ADL director, that's the Anti-Defamation League. This is a leftist organization. He completely unloads on MSNBC. MSNBC has been attempting to humanize Hamas, and this is all while Joe Biden took the day off yesterday. I've got to sneak that in there, but who's writing the scripts over at CNN, MSNBC? Who's writing these scripts? And Jonathan Greenblatt, he was on MSNBC, and he roasted him. So I'm going to talk about that. Plus, we need to watch this. This is insane. ESPN Plus So this is a new anti-racism series, and this woman on this television show, I caught this yesterday on Twitter, and my jaw dropped. She said that the athletes in the NFL, the NBA, they're the new slaves. And my jaw dropped because does this woman know how much these people are getting paid? Does she know how much athletes in the NFL are paid? Does she know how much the athletes in the NBA are paid? So we're going to be getting to that. Plus, one of the most famous rabbis here in America called out Cory Booker for his crap. And Cory Booker, he gets on social media and he's, saying that he supports Israel, that he voted to give Iran, then he voted to give Iran $150 billion. This is something that we need to look at their actions, not what they say. We need to recognize that Joe Biden gave $6 billion to Iran. He left weapons over in Afghanistan when that whole that debacle happened, and now those weapons, according to an Israeli Defense Forces soldier, he's a commander actually. He says in Newsweek this morning that those weapons are now being used against Americans. They're being used against the hostages. Now, I don't know the number of Americans that are dead so far in Israel. We're looking at about 11 is what I saw this morning. But the hostage situation is insane. There's so many hostages. And they're from Canada, Germany, France. So we're going to be getting into that because this rabbi calls Cory Booker out on his crap, and you need to call these people out too. I don't care how many statements. You can say that you support Israel until you're blue in the face. Your actions matter to me. And if you voted for $150 billion to go over to Iran, which subsequently will go to the Palestinians, which will subsequently get into the hands of these Hamas terrorist organizations for things like this, for terrorist attacks. So we're going to be talking about that. The director of the Anti-Defamation League, he went on MSNBC. He called out the network for their pathetic attempts to try to humanize Hamas. And they're trying to act like both sides are to blame here. They're trying to say that, oh, yeah, the Israeli citizen deaths, those are tragic, as well as the Hamas terrorist deaths. And they're trying to, they're not the same thing. This is all while Joe Biden has decided to take the rest of the day off. As of yesterday, he took the day off right before noon. And I know that those two things don't really have anything to do with each other, but I did just want to throw out that Joe Biden did that yesterday because seriously, screw that guy. Screw that guy, Joe Biden. Can't believe it. He took the day off. Well, we've got American hostages over there. And I mean, now I'm hearing a death toll of 11 Americans already. And it's not a coincidence that Barack Obama has not come out and condemned he hasn't condemned the horror in Israel. Okay, now Joe Biden has come out and condemned it. But then look what Joe Biden did yesterday. He left. He took a vacation day while this is happening. So watch what they do, not what they say. Now, the ADL director, his name's Jonathan Greenblatt. He went on the MSNBC's Morning Joe. I don't know. I don't really watch it. I caught it on Twitter. And he was wanting to let MSNBC know that the writing, the networks, like that the network, the content is terrible. And he says that the Hamas terrorists, they're being glossed over as fighters. And he says that MSNBC is trying to paint this picture that both sides, Israelis and Palestinians, they're both to blame for this. And they're not. The Israelis are defending themselves after this tragic surprise attack. It was a surprise terror. They're shooting teenagers in the back. Nobody does that. Nobody. And the people who did this, they are not fighters. They are not militants. They are what this fellow says is terrorists. That's what he says. He is very clear about it. He makes no mistake that these people are, in fact, terrorists. And I want to play that here for you. And you guys can see Jonathan Greenblatt on MSNBC if you were to head on over to the stream. That's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Let's take a listen to Jonathan Greenblatt on MSNBC. Calling him out. Here we go.
And so while I am sad and trying to cope, I'll be honest, I am angry. I am angry with the world that allowed the dehumanization of Israelis and sanitized the terrorism of Hamas. I must say, I love this show and I love this network, but I've got to ask, who is writing the scripts? Hamas, the people who did this, they are not fighters, Jonathan. They are not militants. And I'm looking right at the camera. They are terrorists. It is a barbarian who rapes and brutalizes women, who kills children in front of their parents, and then brings them over to Gaza, who literally, we've heard all these reports, and we know these aren't just reports. These were filmed gleefully by the barbarians who committed these grotesque crimes. They filmed, for example, an elderly woman in her home in one of these towns. They burned her alive in her house because she was too infirm to take out. And, parading women, bleeding from the crotch because they were raped throughout Gaza while people hoot and holler and cheer. So look, when we say, oh, this was an escalation, it was bound to happen, I am sorry. This was a massacre that was pre-planned. This was not destined to happen.
So there, he questions. He goes, "Who's writing these scripts on MSNBC? Who's doing it?" The irony of all of that, Jonathan Greenblatt, who you heard there, he's a leftist. He's at the Anti-Defamation League. It's a leftist organization. He's sitting next to the celebrated anti-Semite Al Sharpton, who is a paid contributor of MSNBC. Now, get this, it gets even juicier because Joe Scarborough, while in Congress, he introduced and sponsored a resolution condemning Al Sharpton for his anti-Semitism. Now Al Sharpton, he's sitting there as a paid commentator on Joe Scarborough's show, on his morning show. These people are ridiculous. You couldn't make this stuff up if you tried. Now, this is a little story out of Illinois, actually. So, hot off the heels of that, we've got MSNBC out there trying to humanize the Hamas terrorists, and you're like, "Can't they're not. They're probably not doing that." No, they are. So MSNBC, they actually sent a journalismer out to Little Palestine in Illinois. So there is a little village in Illinois. It's called Palestine, and I guess they sent an MSNBC journalismer out there to try to get the conversation going, to try to figure out how those Illinois residents feel. And overall, the residents of this little village, it's a population of 85,000. So they're telling MSNBC that Hamas had no choice but to rape, torture, abduct children, infants, elderly, because they were provoked. Hamas was provoked. So let's take a listen to it here. If you don't believe me, just listen to the writing, listen to the content that MSNBC is putting out there for their viewers, for their listeners. And I mean, this is what Jonathan Greenblatt was talking about. Here we go.
Because provocations day after day, time after time, it was nonstop, and it seems like the Netanyahu government is not willing to bring any peace to the region.
For me, it was kind of conflicting because I'm half Palestinian, my mom's half American, so it was like it's conflicting for me because you have people in there and innocent bystanders that'll be involved in it, but at the same time, it's like, what other choice did they have?
So again, that's the perspective that we're including from this part of our country. Again, this is a vibrant Palestinian community in suburban Chicago. I should note, most of the people that we met last night did not want to talk.
Okay, so this is Palestinian. Oh, okay. So this is a Palestinian community. It's Bridgeview, Illinois. I want to make that correction. It's not Palestine, Illinois. There is a Palestine, Illinois, but this is in a Palestinian community that is 85,000. It's in the Chicago area. Want to make that clarification. There is a Palestine, Illinois. I thought it was in Palestine, Illinois. This is in Bridgeview, Illinois. Now, they sat there, the residents, they were sitting there and they were saying that, oh, yeah, they were provoked. And Hamas had no choice but to rape, torture, and abduct teenagers, infants, the elderly. Oh, come on. And then this reporter shows, she gets out there, Maggie Vespa is her name, and then she goes out there and she goes, there's an overall feeling of pain. My gosh. Now, I haven't watched cable news a whole lot this morning, obviously, but If I had to guess, MSNBC, CNN, they're most likely going to be talking about how Matt Gaetz is anti-democracy and how this GOP, they're going to be talking about the GOP speaker's race. They're not going to be talking about how Hamas are not human. These are crazy terrorists, okay? And Joe Biden, they're not going to be talking about his incompetency or his lack of empathy or how he took a day off yesterday. That's my guess. They're most likely going to be talking about Matt Gaetz and the speakership race. All right, I do have to take a break. You won't believe it. Out of Newsweek this morning, the Israeli Defense Forces, there was a commander, and he gets out on Newsweek and he talks about how the weapons that were left in Afghanistan are now being used against Americans and against the Israelis in this Hamas attack on Israel. So I'll be back talking a little bit about this. Plus, a little bit later, we will be chatting about ESPN. Plus, there's a new TV series, anti-racism TV series, I suppose. They're talking about how athletes are the new slaves. Yes, the NFL athletes, the NBA athletes, they're all enslaved. That's next. It's not about their actions. It's not about their words. It's all about their actions. Look at what they do, not what they say. They can come out with all of these different statements and say that they're behind Israel, but they're not. Just look at what Joe Biden has done. A high-ranking Israel Defense Forces commander, he's telling Newsweek that the weapons America left behind during Joe Biden's botched withdrawal from Afghanistan may have been used in the Hamas attack on Israel. Yes. So those weapons, I mean, we had Humvees over there, we had guns, we had tanks, we had all kinds of things over in Afghanistan. And the attack has left hundreds of people dead, including Americans. Now, I don't have the exact number. It's kind of conflicting reports right now on how many Americans are dead over in Gaza. I think it's 11 is the last one that I saw. 11 Americans have died in this attack. Now, the bitter irony is that what Joe Biden said, this is exactly what Joe Biden said would happen in 2007. Okay, so 2007, Joe Biden predicted that American weapons would be used against Americans to kill Americans over in Israel or over in some sort of country in the Middle East. 2021's Joe Biden, after 14 or so more years of his brain being turned into oatmeal, because that's what's going on. Joe Biden's brain is oatmeal now. He was in such a rush to get out of Afghanistan and get back to vacation, because believe me, that's why he wanted to get out of Afghanistan, because he wanted to get back to vacation. He didn't care what was left behind in 2021 when we withdrew from Afghanistan. It was completely botched. It's a debacle. And his brain is oatmeal by 2021. In 2007, the guy actually sounded he actually called it. He said, "Hey, we can't leave weapons there." In 2007, he said, "We need to get our guys home, but we can't leave the weapons there because believe me, they're going to be used against your grandchildren and my grandchildren." So in 2021, the U.S. military abandoned tens of millions of dollars worth of aircraft, armored vehicles, sophisticated defense systems in a rush to leave that airport in Kabul. Okay, so this was in 2021. The Afghanistan withdrawal. Newsweek reports, quote, more recently, the Taliban secured a substantial arsenal of the U.S. weapons and equipment, including Black Hawk helicopters, after the U.S. forces withdrew from Afghanistan in August of 2021. The Israeli commander, with whom Newsweek spoke, said some of the U.S. small arms seized in Afghanistan have already gotten into the hands of these Palestinian groups who are operating in the Gaza Strip. Okay, so that's what happened. The guns are in the hands of these Palestinians, Hamas, and they have things like Black Hawk helicopters. The Taliban does, and they've secured a substantial arsenal of the U.S. weapons and equipment since our withdrawal. So it's exactly what Joe Biden said the Taliban was going to do back in 2007. Okay, he predicted this. The rub here is that Joe Biden didn't remember what he said in 2007. In 2021, what Joe Biden, he accurately predicted that this would happen in 2007. But why didn't he do something different in 2021 if that was his prediction in 2007? So 2007 was the last time he ran for president, and he was mocking somebody else for their incompetent foreign policy. So here's Joe Biden. Let's go back into the Wayback Machine. 2007, him predicting that this is exactly what would happen if you withdrew from Afghanistan in a crappy way. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
How we end this war. And it makes a big difference to tell the American people the truth about what our options are in ending this war. If tomorrow the order goes out from I'm President of the United States, I issue an order, end the war today, begin to withdraw all American troops. It will take a year to get the American troops out. Do you hear me now? That's the truth. It will take a year to get them physically.
So there you have it. It would take a year to get them physically out. And cuts off here. This is odd. The Later on in his speech there, he goes, "Now, if you leave all the equipment behind, you might be able to do it in 7 months. It will take a year to get all those people out, but if you leave all the equipment behind, you could do it in 7 months. If you leave those billions of dollars of weapons behind," he says this in 2007, "I promise they're going to be used against your grandchild and mine someday." So that's exactly what's going on. 11 Americans, at least that's the report that I've got, dead. There's more hostages. Who knows? That death toll number is probably up. I'd be curious to hear what President Joe Biden says, what his excuses are, and if he has anything to say for himself here. Okay, so he said it in 2007 that, "Hey, we shouldn't leave that equipment because that equipment is going to be used against your grandchild and my grandchild." No, he was too busy flipping cheeseburgers on Sunday to address the issue, yes. You've grown accustomed to Joe Biden being a terrible person, and being run by people who don't really care about optics. I don't understand why they would let Joe Biden out there on the beach with his swim trunks that have little tiny turtles in them, okay, not very presidential. Clearly, they don't care about optics. This is the same guy who needed to be dragged from vacation kicking and screaming while Maui was in flames, and his incompetent Afghanistan withdrawal left 13 service members dead and all. Okay, this is the same guy. But even by usual Joe Biden standards, I'm gonna say that this is awful. Having a barbecue while the attack on Israel was going on, okay, that it has left Americans held hostage and murdered. He was having a barbecue, even by Joe Biden standards. There's nothing on the public schedule, today. It might change. There's no press briefing scheduled. There's still time for them to schedule a confused Joe Biden warbling his way up there to stand behind a podium, pulling out note cards with the names of, pre-approved reporters, as he has to call on them, and take their questions. Not really answer the questions, but he takes on these pre-approved reporters, takes their questions, and he doesn't really answer it, and then he walks off while Peter Ducey is yelling at him. Okay, so there's still time for them to schedule that, but I'm not seeing it on his public schedule. So we'll have to see. But point is here, folks, he in 2007 said, "Now, if you leave all the equipment behind, you can do it in 7 months." So yeah, withdrawing from Afghanistan. But if you leave those billions of dollars of weapons behind, believe me, I promise they're gonna be used against your grandchild and mine someday. He said that he accurately predicted that in 2007. So why did he rush the withdrawal out of Afghanistan if he knew that was gonna happen? Why did he do that in 2021? His brain was oatmeal? Did he forgot? Did he forget? What? All right, I'm gonna be back. I've gotta click my Trump was right button, because he actually released a statement on August 17th, and he said that, "Hey, this $6 billion that we're giving to Iran, they're gonna use that, and I'm telling you right now, the Palestinians are going to use that to attack Israel in a terrorist attack. The terrorists, the Hamas terrorist group, they're going to be using that against the Israelis." Trump was right again. He predicted that in August of this year, so they in just a couple of months from that prediction, they attacked Israel. So I'm going to be back. This is the Morning Buzz. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Good morning. Thank you for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. You can text me at 309-451-9299. Be part of the show. See me live in studio, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. I got to hit my Trump was right button. And it's going to play a statement of his that he released on August 17th of this year. You won't believe what he said. He predicted it, that this $6 billion that Joe Biden gave to Iran in this weird, I don't even understand it really. I mean, the hostage situation. So we exchanged hostages with Iran. And on top of that, we gave them $6 billion. They didn't give us money, but we gave them money because they did the deal. They did the exchange. Like it was supposed to be a deal where we exchanged our hostages. Listen to Donald Trump here. He predicted that this was going to happen, the attack on Israel. Here we go.
Crooked Joe Biden just agreed to pay a $6 billion ransom to the Iranian dictatorship in exchange for hostages. This is yet another Biden surrender and a further blistering humiliation of the United States of America to the world stage. But even worse, this decision will be extremely deadly. Biden is giving $6 billion to the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. Just as when Obama sent the Iranian regime pallets of cash for hostages in the dark of night, remember, plane loads of cash. Biden's ransom payment will be immediately used to stoke violence, bloodshed, and mayhem throughout the Middle East and all around the world, costing countless innocent lives. It's also guaranteed that the fanatical Iranian regime will use this money to advance their nuclear weapons program, putting Israel, the United States, and the entire world in very grave peril. They are reportedly just weeks away from a nuclear bomb, something which would have never happened under the Trump administration. Tragically, Biden's ransom payments also make it dramatically more likely that even more Americans will be held captive in the future, because Biden has shown that he will pay gargantuan sums of money, meaning the kidnappers turn a massive profit. They're making money hand over fist. In other words, Biden has put a bounty on the head of every American citizen abroad. Under my leadership, we brought home more than 50 hostages from all over the world, and we never paid ransom money to do it, not at all. We did it with diplomacy, and we did it through strength, and we will do it again when we are reelected as President of the United States. Our country is failing. We are a failing nation. We will turn it around and we will make America great again. Thank you.
So there you have it. That was my Donald Trump was right button, and I had to press it this morning because, I mean, he was right. Why did we give $6 billion away to Iran? And coming up in just a little bit, I do want to talk about this rabbi. He goes after this Democrat. His name's Cory Booker. Cory Booker is his name. And he was in Israel. Somehow he made it out of there. I don't know how, of course, he got out of there right away. But Cory Booker is the man who claims that he saves helpless people from burning buildings. He saves puppies from freezing to death. He shovels snow for residents and their driveways. Okay, this is the guy. And now he's claiming that he dodged rockets in Israel and fought for his life over the weekend. But he's being called out. This is a New Jersey Democrat, and he says that he was jogging in Israel when Hamas began their unprecedented terrorist attack. And this rabbi, he's a famous rabbi here in the United States. He calls him out and he goes, "Look, man, you actually voted for $150 billion to go to Iran, which subsequently is going to get into the hands of the Palestinian terrorist groups, Hamas being one of them." And he calls him out. He wrote on Twitter that, hey, dude, you gave $150 billion to Iran, which is going to be used to murder and which has been used to murder innocent people. I'm going to be talking a little bit about that here on the Morning Buzz. But first, I did want to get into the story about ESPN Plus, because you're not going to believe this TV series. I guess it's an anti-racism TV series, and they're claiming in this TV series that athletes are the new slaves. This is why I don't watch TV. This is why I don't watch sports. Can someone remind me how many millionaire slaves we currently have in America. How many? I mean, the median salary of NFL players, $860,000 per year. They're millionaires. Okay, over half of the NFL players are black, and in the NBA, the players take home an average salary of nearly 10 million. Okay, all of the players combined, they take home an average of $10 million. Okay, so they have a lot of money, these NBA players. And the NBA in 2021 was composed of 73.2% black players. Okay, so the NBA largely black, NFL half of the players are black. Okay, so the definition of slavery is when you're forced to work and do not own the fruits of your labor. Okay, you don't get to keep the money, you are enslaved. Okay, that's the actual definition of slavery. But despite that actual definition, black athletes uh, being compensated millions of dollars for playing professional sports is the modern day version of slavery in America. Now, that's according to campus reform. So now there's this little TV series that they've got going on ESPN Plus, and her name is Ibram Kendi, and this series title is titled "Skin in the Game," which they challenge racism in the sports world. So that's what this whole TV series is about. It sounds terrible, but let's take a listen to what they were saying about how the athletes in sports like the NFL, NBA, they say that these athletes are actually enslaved. Here we go.
It's almost like the contracts, are the new slave chains, right? So, you have to sign this contract and sign this document and sign this document. It's like you're binded to this. And then if you break that, that's your livelihood, that's your life. So we the new slaves. Athletes are literally the new slaves because we need this. Our families, our friends depend on this contract to eat.
What? You've got to be kidding me. So that woman there, who you heard, her name is Gwendolyn Berry. Now, she appears in the documentary. This is a series. It's called Skin in the Game, and she claimed that professional sports contracts are quote slave chains, are like slave chains. So Barry, if you guys don't remember who this woman is, she was that hammer thrower who turned away from the American flag as the national anthem was being played, while later saying that she was pissed that the Star Spangled Banner was being played as she received her bronze medal. If this is slavery, then where do I sign up? Because I would love to make $860,000 a year. Okay. And, but okay, if it advances equity, I'm perfectly okay with paying athletes minimum wage. Let's really talk about equity. You want equity? Let's pay the athletes minimum wage. Would they also prefer at will employment? But in case it wasn't clear to progressive activists, a contract, it's a mutually agreed upon document. That's what a contract is. At the risk, the risk does not come at the expense of the player in a lot of these contracts in this situation. Okay, but these are the same progressives that claim that people need special treatment in order to advance equity. If you really want to talk about equity, then these players with the NBA, with the NFL, they should be paid minimum wage. Okay, if you really want to talk about equity, when it comes to the NBA, would this mean we need to, discriminate against black people and hire more white people in order to reflect the demographics of its population in this situation? Okay, so obviously we should not do that. But if activists actually believe what they said, they would apply the logic fairly. Okay, so we would actually put in and we'd try to meet a racial quota to meet this equity thing where we are putting in white people, and we would discriminate against black people and hire more white people in order to reflect the demographics of the population. Okay, that's equity. But they don't believe in that. Obviously, they don't believe in that. But progressives, all they have is double standards. If they don't have their double standards, then they wouldn't have standards at all. I do have to take a quick break, but when we come back, like I said, we're going to talk about Cory Booker and how he was in Israel and how he says he's pro-Israel. But actually, the guy, he's a Democrat out of New Jersey. He voted for $150 billion to be dedicated to Iran and Iran causes. We know that if you give money to Iran, it's going to get into the Palestinians' hands and into these terrorist organizations. So I'm going to be back on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. And yeah, progressives, they've got double standards, or else they wouldn't have any standards at all. That's their only standards, double standards. This is actually insulting to people who are actually enslaved, and they weren't given an option to sign a contract. And of course, I'm talking about this new ESPN Plus TV series. It's called, what is it called? Skin in the Game. And it's a TV series designed around the challenges, racism in the sports world. Okay. So they're talking about anti-racism in the sports world, and they're saying that the athletes in the NFL, the NBA, that they are actually enslaved, and that this is modern day slavery. What? If this is slavery, I mean, sign me up. I don't understand. $860,000 a year is what these NFL players make. NBA, not that much different. And where are the white athletes slaves as well? Or is it only the black athletes who are slaves? I don't understand. Their claims really open up a lot of questions more than answers. And the demand for oppression is very high these days. But you're paid $1 million to sit on the bench. I don't know how that's slavery, but that's besides the point. Anyway, I do have to tell you a little bit about Cory Booker. He's a guy who says that, oh yeah, I save people from burning buildings. He saves puppies from freezing to death. He also, shovels residents' driveways and shovels the snow from residents' driveways. He's a great guy. And apparently he's also dodged rockets in Israel as he fought for his life over the weekend. But this was actually Booker's Spartacus moment. Was this actually his Spartacus moment that he's longed for? Well, not exactly, since I don't think that Spartacus hides in a stairwell. So I'm going to play this audio for you. He puts it on his social media. He talks about how he hides in the stairwell and he dodges all of these missiles. And, frankly, I just don't believe it. But he's a New Jersey Democrat, and he says that he was jogging in Israel when Hamas began these unprecedented terrorist attacks. And don't worry, he got out very quick. He's safe. I don't know how the American hostages and how 11 Americans died, the people who were there just, on vacation, living their life. I don't know how they didn't get out, but he got out. But he made sure as soon as he got out, and he made sure to let the world know that he made it out safe. And he posts this, broken heart mumbo jumbo on his Twitter page. And I'm sorry. This rabbi is calling him out, and I'm going to call him out here on the other side. He gave money to Iran. Actually, he voted to give $150 billion to Iran, which we know will subsequently get into the hands of these radical terrorist organizations, these Hamas terrorist groups, the Palestinians. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the rabbi. He's one of the most popular rabbis here in America, and he says he is actually a close friend of Booker's, and he exposes him because that's what a true friend does. A true friend exposes the lies, the fraud, and he's not going to let him get away with the lies. I'm excited. Come back after the break. 8:06 a.m. is when we're back. Check me out on the live stream, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. We're going to be talking a little bit about this victim narrative. We've got AOC, we've got Ilhan Omar, we've got Rashida Tlaib, all saying and echoing the same thing, that, the Hamas terrorist deaths are equal to that of the Israeli innocent citizens dying in the street. That's what they're saying, that these two are the same thing, and that, it was just inevitable. They were just going to they were going to do this at some point because the Palestinians were provoked into doing it, and they've been oppressed and they've been occupied by the Israelis. That's not true. That's a victim narrative, and it's dangerous to sow this victim narrative into people when it's just not true. Telling somebody they're a victim is going to lead to an uprising. Okay. And our American congressmen and women have for years been anti-Semitic, and Rashida Tlaib is an anti-Semite, and she has said just spewed lies about the Israelis. It's very clear, okay? This didn't happen because the Israelis were oppressing the Palestinians. This happened because um, the Palestinians, the Hamas terrorist group, they launched the surprise attack on Israel. Okay, so this happened over the weekend. That was a surprise attack. It was the the Festival of Tabernacles. This was a Jewish holiday, and it was during Shabbat. And they bombed or they did 5,000, I think it was, missile strikes into Israel, and then they bombed this music festival. It was really tragic. And the victim narrative is so, so dangerous. And make no mistake, the people who are supporting Hamas, we see that in New York City, we see it in Washington, D.C., and San Francisco, these groups, they are supporting Hamas. Okay. And what has begun to happen in this country is there's this victim narrative with BLM, Antifa. They're trying to say that you're oppressed when you're really not. NFL players making $860,000 a year for sitting on the bench. Yeah, I don't think that's oppression. Um, uh, but what I'm trying to get at here is the BLM, the Antifa folks, the people who are supporting this kind of thing that's happening in Israel, and are supporting the Hamas terrorist group, they are going to turn on us pretty soon. They're taking note. This is the danger of victim narratives, and AOC and the like. They have continued to say that minorities are oppressed here. They have continued to say that Black Americans are oppressed here, and this has led to radical domestic terrorism here in this country, where our own citizens are turning on us. And that is kind of what happened in Israel. Okay. So this victim narrative has been sown for so long. And these Palestinians think that the Israelis are oppressing them, that the Jewish people are oppressing them. And that just could be further from the truth. And they've broken off. They've created these essentially like militaries. I mean, they're full blown governments. Now it hasn't gotten to a point where BLM and Antifa has created their own government. Now they've actually tried. In Seattle, there was this little autonomous zone, and we even saw it in Atlanta, where excuse me, bones in my coffee, where they actually broke off and created an autonomous zone called Chaz. Now that is, just a tiny little sliver of what has actually happened in Israel. They broke off from Israel and created an autonomous zone, and eventually that autonomous zone got things like government, armed militias, and they've created these Hamas terrorist organizations. And now they're brutally raping, kidnapping, murdering Israelis. And I like what Ryan says here. Anyone who equates terrorists to humans is sick and evil. They raped, kidnapped, and murdered Israelis. Their death isn't the same. Yeah. Yeah, it's not the same. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. We are going to be talking a little bit about the rabbi who came out and called out Cory Booker. Now, I know some people who have said, yeah, hey, at least Joe Biden is standing with the Israels, and he's posturing, folks, okay? Pay attention to their actions, not to their words. And he can send out the aircraft carrier to the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. I don't believe it. I don't believe that he's actually standing with Israel. You want to know why I say that? He wouldn't have left those weapons there. He called it in 2007. He knew. Now, it's either he forgot that he said it in 2007, that those weapons would eventually be used against Americans who are there in Israel, or he knew that it would happen and he did it anyway. Okay, it's either he forgot or he knew it would happen and he did it anyway because he's a sicko. But yeah, pay attention to their actions. The $6 billion to Iran, the $150 billion that Cory Booker voted for to go to Iran. We're going to talk about it here on Buzz. Share this out with your normie friends. We're going to be back in just a little bit. Cory Booker. I guess he's the guy who helps save people from burning buildings. He's the guy who saves puppies from freezing to death. He's also the guy who shovels the snow from the residents' driveways. He's just a great guy. And most recently, he has now dodged rockets in Israel as he fought for his life over the weekend. That's Cory Booker. But was this actually Booker's Spartacus moment? And was this the Spartacus moment that he's longed for? No, not exactly, because I don't think Spartacus would have hidden in a stairwell. For some reason, the New Jersey Democrat was jogging in Israel when Hamas began their unprecedented terrorist attack, which frankly, I just don't believe it. But that's what he said he was doing. He was jogging when Israel was attacked, and he dodged the missiles and he hid in this stairway or whatever. And he made sure he got out, folks, by the way. The Democrat got out. I don't know how he did it. There's other people who are being held hostage. There's Americans who have died. I've seen totals 11 Americans that we know of have died. I'm sure that number is going to climb. But he made sure to post to let the world know that he was okay and that he was safe. And he posted some sort of, McGurkin, some mumbo jumbo. And I want to share what he posted. You guys can see me live in studio. That's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. We are going to be chatting about Cory Booker here, but also you guys are going to want to stay tuned because the Bloomington police, they've posted on their Facebook post. It was a Facebook post, the Bloomington police fentanyl overdoses. They're increasing. I think this year, the number is 18 in McLean County. Just in this last year, 18 overdoses in McLean County. Just in the past couple of weeks, I think there were 9 overdoses, and then 3 of those 9 overdoses led to death. So we've got to talk about that here coming up in just a little bit. But here's Cory Booker, and he gets on Twitter and lets everybody know that he's okay and he made it out.
I am in Israel. About this time yesterday, I was jogging behind me in the old city when I got a urgent call from my chief of staff telling me to get back to the hotel as quickly as I could, that Israel was under attack. There were thousands of rockets being launched. When I got back to the hotel, I joined others in the bomb shelter or the stairwells of the hotel. Frightened faces. There were children and elderly families, many Americans. There was a sense of fear and worry, and a knowledge to many of us that there were horrific things going on around the country at that time. Hundreds of people have been killed. Thousands of people have been wounded in a level of attacks at a scale that is staggering and really has not been seen in this country for over 50 years. We who believe in peace and freedom and human rights for Palestinians, for Israelis, for all humankind, must reject those who use terror as their weapon.
Oh, there he goes again. This is a big red flag. If they say, terror against Palestinians and Israelis. No. The Israelis are defending themselves against the Palestinians. This is not the Palestinians are not facing terror. Okay. Israel is actually informing them, hey, get all your women and children out of these buildings. We're going to attack these buildings. You need to get all your women and children out. So they're playing fair. The other side is not playing fair. They did a surprise terrorist attack. It was over the weekend. That was Cory Booker letting everybody know he's okay. He did make it out. I don't know how he did that, but what did he expect when he decided to give all that money to Iran? Okay, so he ironically talks about, after this experience, he adds this in his Twitter post here, Cory Booker. He goes, after this experience, more than ever, I'm committed to working with my colleagues in the Senate to continue supporting Israel's security and ensuring stability to the region. And I hope one day soon a long-term and just peace in the region. What did he expect to happen when I think it's weird that now he's coming out and he's saying, yeah, let's focus on Israeli security and their stability. So the rabbi, his name is Shmuley. He actually says that he's a close friend to Cory Booker. He actually exposed him for the true fraud that he really is. Okay, Cory Booker. So this is what the rabbi wrote on Twitter. He is a very popular rabbi, Rabbi Shmuley. He says, please stop bragging about how you endured rockets in Israel. You were my closest friend for 25 years. You were student president at Oxford and my brother. You were my student president at Oxford and you were my brother. Then you voted to give the Iranian terrorists, these monsters who largely are responsible through Hamas for this attack, and murdered 700 Israelis. This attack that murdered 700 Israelis, $150 billion to murder innocents in order to preserve your political standing. Also, right after you made this video, your staff flew you right out of Israel, and I wonder how you got special treatment to get on a plane to get out of a war zone. I only hope for our friendship and for your relationship with the Jewish community is for you to finally come to the well of the Senate floor this week and condemn your own vote to give billions of dollars to Iran. He voted yes to go give $150 billion to Iran and by extension Hamas, and to apologize profusely and beg for the forgiveness of the innocent Iranian people who are being brutalized by their government, by the Iranians and by extension Hamas, and the Jewish community. I want you to profusely apologize and beg for forgiveness from the Jewish community. Otherwise, we are not interested in these posts. Words are cheap, Cory. Remember all the Torah we studied together. It's action that counts. Yes, it's action that counts. Joe Biden, he gave $6 billion to Iran in this crappy hostage. I mean, he paid the ransom. And he comes out with this statement. And I hear people say, hey, at least Joe Biden came out with a statement and he stands behind Israel. Shut up. No, he's not supporting Israel. Look at the actions. Look at the actions of Cory Booker. Look at the actions of Joe Biden. Look at the actions of Rashida Tlaib, AOC. They can sit there and say that they support Israel all they want. They don't. And that's clear because I told you the U.S. Office of the Palestinian Affairs, they came out and they tweeted and they urged the Israeli people not to defend themselves. They said, please don't escalate any further. Don't defend yourself, Israel, against these surprise terrorist attacks from Hamas, Iran, by extension Hamas. In other words, this guy voted to award an evil regime an excessive amount of cash that subsequently funded this attack. That's what Cory Booker did. That's what Joe Biden did. He also left all of the weapons behind in Afghanistan, which are now being used against Americans to kill the 11. I don't know if the death toll is going to rise. It likely will. There's a lot of hostages over there. Look at their actions. Don't listen to their words. Okay. Booker made a deal with the devil, and now he pretends to care about peace. Maybe you should have thought about that before you voted for terrorism, Cory. Maybe you should have thought about it later. All right. We are going to be back. I got to take a quick break. But when we come back, David Paul Blumenshine joining me. I also have to tell you a little bit about the Bloomington police. They're noticing a spike in overdose deaths here in McLean County. That's a big deal, folks. We've got 18 drug-related deaths for this year in our county. And then just in the past 2 weeks, we're looking at 9 overdoses. Of those 9, 3 of them have died from an overdose. So close the border. We're going to talk about that here on the other side. This is The Morning Buzz. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. You guys can always see us live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. My good friend David Paul Blue and Shine right over there. Good morning, David. How's your morning? It's a little frosty on the windows.
There's frost on the pumpkin this morning, Kat. It is the
No.
harvest season.
I hate frost.
Well, Kat, we can't avoid the frost.
I know.
Things were a little frosty last night at the McLean County Government Center, where the 4 applicants for the vacated seat of John McIntyre, they were given questions about their livelihoods and everything else like that. And yeah, we'll have to talk about that, Kat.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it right now. Let's talk about it right now. We can talk about that, and then we'll get into the Hamas, what they're chanting in Australia.
Sydney, Australia, outside the Opera House. It's sickening.
Mhm.
Obviously, we highlight the very few idiots. And I'm just going to call it like it is. They're idiots. They're morons. To stand and shout, "Kill the Jews." Gas the Jews.
Gas the
Actually, gas the
Jews.
Jews, not kill the Jews. And they had some other colorful metaphors to say about the Jews. What kind of world do we live in? Where is the outrage? But I know you want to talk about the McLean County
Mhm.
executive board meeting last night, where they interviewed the 4 applicants for the vacated seat of John McIntyre.
Yeah, and I've actually got a little bit of audio. Let's play a little bit of it so you get a feeling about this executive committee meeting that happened last night, Columbus Day. Here we go. Let's take a listen.
Oh, I better get my headphones on. Instrumental in creating the facility that adjoins our jail. That's needed, and it's going to continue to be a need, obviously, to serve all the citizens of McLean County. I am a proponent for everyone in McLean County. I think that that is the most important thing to do as a county board member, is to take into consideration the totality of whether you live in the outskirts in a rural area or whether you live in the city of Bloomington or the town of Normal. I know that you will have questions. Are questions part of the 5 minutes that I have?
No, we will have questions. It will not be part of 5 minutes.
Okay, so that's not part of the 5 minutes. Really, I'll go back to.
Okay, so then do they ask you questions a little bit later on?
They do. So the questions are going to come. Catherine does a nice job. This was the first time that Catherine Metzger was operating in her official capacity as the county chair. She went on to explain kind of the engagement thing. I didn't know where, they said you have 5 minutes. I'm like, and then I was told that they would be asking questions. I didn't know if that was part of the 5 minutes.
Mhm.
It actually went on for about a half hour for each individual, but there is a part, and I know that I didn't know where you were at. If you want to go into the questioning, I'm only allowed 5 minutes there to speak, but some of the questions were interesting to hear the board members and what they had to say.
What was your favorite question? What was the most amusing question, I should say?
I would say the most amusing question was this from board member Elizabeth Johnston. She holds a seat in the 5th district. She's actually had a 2-tier question. And one dealt with the fact that I lived in District 4 up until the time that my wife and I sold our house and moved into District 5. She said there's rumor out on the street. She seems to have these people that she talks to, and they seem to be the voice of District 5, the majority, I guess, which is interesting because Elizabeth did not win that seat of hers with the most votes. John McIntyre did. In fact, John has always won that district.
In fact, your daughter almost beat Lizzie Johnson.
Well, I mean, she was competitive.
Almost.
She was competitive. She was
without campaigning.
Well, she didn't have the opportunity to campaign because she started a new job with O'Brien Auto Group, and she headed up she was working in the digital sales area. But Elizabeth's question was, are you going to be moving? rumor has it, that you're going to be leaving, in a year or something. And so I had to explain a little bit about, first and foremost, that I received a Facebook message from Howard Packowitz from WHOI. And
How
Howard,
weird.
yeah, and Howard was asking about the fact, did I indeed live in the district? And then also Howard wanted to, he said it was rumored that I don't live in the district. So I sent him my voter ID card from Kathy Michael and a snapshot. And he goes, well, that kind of answers that question. And it does. I live in District 5, and that's part of the reason that I was an applicant, really, because at that point when I submitted my application, Kat, there were no other applicants. And we had already gone through the process of the the voting for the chairmanship and also the voting to seat District 8. That was all coming in. I think it would have been nice to do all of this at the same time, because it does kind of create a duplicity. Because now we're back at it. But the question, so I did say, and if you played the video that's out on YouTube, the executive committee, I said to Elizabeth that that now I'm certain that I realize that the public is talking about whether I live in district, whether I don't live in district. That to me is, if you make application and the requirements are that you're in district, why would anybody lie about that? And if they do, they should be held accountable for it. So I thought that was an interesting question. The follow-up question was, she wanted to bring up the fact that I ran for office for the 105th district. And she said, some of people that I talked to in the district, while you were running, you were at door.
Who are these people?
Well,
I don't understand. She's talking about these people
well, she did
in
it,
very vague
for,
terms.
She did it for Chad Burke too.
Mm.
In fact, it was interesting with Chad. It was almost embarrassing, because she brought up the incident where he was stabbed in his front yard, as if the neighbors are talking about Chad because they think he's the disruptor. He's the antagonist. He's the bad person. No, he was stabbed. A crime was committed against Chad.
Mm.
I mean, to try to leverage that or to position, to grandstand with that, it was just really embarrassing. But in my instance, she said, you were kind of antagonistic at the doors. Well, Elizabeth, I'm sure that I was out campaigning, trying to inform the public of my candidacy for state representative. I would have most likely been at Republican doors, not at Democrat doors. However, there probably were people that were, independents, moderates that I spoke with, and we might have differing opinions. I am pretty certain, that my opinions are very passionate, and I have a belief system, but so do the people I was greeting at the door. What I also have found out is over time that most people are not very well informed, or they're informed by people who kind of skew it. I want people to always fact check me.
Yeah.
What I talk about is pretty
by
simple.
these people who she refers to vaguely. There's people who speculate that you don't live in the district. There's people who speculate that you're a criminal, Chad.
Yeah,
these people.
And that's what I said to Elizabeth. I
who
said,
are these people?
Who are these people? Why are we talking about this at an executive board meeting for the candidacy, a vacancy?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a candidate. You have my resume in front of me. We had an application. Let's talk about the qualifications. Yeah, this is, as far as character issues. I mean, wow, are we going to take every county board member and go through their background? Because if we're going to, I've got a lot of questions tonight, because I'm going to be part, if it's selected or nominated, I will be part of the board.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't about whether a person has had issues in their past. I think, how does that change? Because if that's the case, we have plenty of people on the board that we could talk about their backgrounds and where they came from.
I love
because
that.
What does that do to move forward and ultimately, like you said, it's people that aren't even present at this particular board meeting, and you're talking as if this is factual information, because I don't even know who these people are. I don't even know what they said. They're not affidavits. There's not statements of, you know, of contesting my applicant. See, so it's interesting. Go ahead.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring up the, are we going to dig into county board members' past? So I remember I did an article. She was running for this seat, which that is the time to really start to look at people's character when they're actually running for the seat, when they're campaigning, when they put themselves into the public spotlight. And I did a piece on Crystal Abel and how she was in a custody battle for her children. It was a very long custody battle, and she put things on Facebook. Her own Facebook post said, "I've been through financial struggles. I've been on Medicaid most of my life. I've been through more than a decade of family court battles. I've been divorced."
Yeah.
Right. So she,
Life challenges.
yeah, she has
A
some
lot of people have been through that.
life challenges. And I remember the backlash that I got because I was even inquiring about the custody battle. I was asking why she was in this years-long custody battle, and people were meeting me with, "Well, why does that matter? Well, why does that matter? It shouldn't matter." Whoa, I'm just asking a question. And these people play the same thing, but it's okay for them to do it to you, David. And this was, I mean, I would say that, moving out of the district isn't really like as substantial as
going from the 4th district to the 5th district.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a move, and obviously it's documented, change of address, voter ID cards have been submitted. But your point is well taken. One of the board members who you just referred to, Crystal Abel, decided as soon as I made application to go out to social media and broadcast things like about the insurrection. And then she went as far as saying that I was collegial with people who threaten the life of the vice president. I mean, or the president and vice president. I mean, those are just statements of pure they're defamatory, they're slanderous. Now granted, in the court of law, the level of where you stand as a public official, that bar is a little higher. The bar is higher for a public servant than it is for an ordinary citizen. So I just think you let those things stand, say all you want, because that's what they do, right? Gaslighting is quintessential of who they are. Now, you don't see the Republican Party out there gaslighting Crystal Abel or any of the other board members. And that's kind of, like I said, it was very subtle. Jim Rogel, do you say Rogel or is it Rogel?
I've always said Rogel.
Yeah, and I think it sounded like they pronounced that different last night. He had a question about election integrity, because I did happen to be part of the Bailey campaign and statewide director for the election integrity. He said that he has been all over the state and he's not seeing any irregularities to the elections, and wanted to know if I had seen any irregularities. And I had to bring up, the fact that there were now elections have changed. It's 54 days, 40 days of voting, 14 days of adjudication, vote by mail, drop boxes, you still have same day voting, and all of that, with 800,000 submitted vote by mail ballots, actually was over that, and 500,000 being processed through a voting center in Cicero, Illinois. And there's so many things that can happen during an extended period of time. And yes, there are irregularities. They're documented. The Illinois State Board of the Illinois State Board of Elections can tell you they had plenty of incident reports filed. And he said, "Did you actually witness this?" And of course I did. We're dealing with humans, and it's no longer voting day; it's voting season. And when you have 40 days to cast a vote, there's going to be instances of things that aren't necessarily handled correctly, especially at a voting processing center where the mail's just coming in and they're just feeding the ballots through to tabulate them, to open them, to process them. And who's doing that? it's a contract service, right? Because you've got to find enough bodies to handle the influx of mail during that time.
God, be careful with that kind of talk, David, because you might be indicted along President Donald Trump for saying that there's voter irregularities, because Pastor Stephen Lee of Illinois said that there were some voter irregularities, and he questioned a woman who was on tape as a pastor, as a role as a pastor. He was checking in to make sure she was okay. I think it was that she was working with Trump's team. About the voter integrity and elections. And then all of a sudden, I think that she backed out of that, and Pastor Lee was going to check on her and was questioning her about her being on video feeding the same ballot through the tabulator multiple times. You would say that that's an irregularity, right?
Well, yeah, it's an
Feeding.
incident that would violate statute. I mean, there's statute out there. There's a whole code of elections statute book, and it I mean, if to see this book, it's 600 pages, and yes, of course, there's going to be irregularities, human conditions, humans involved. There's going to be human error. It just goes with the territory. Election integrity, as I told them, is to secure fair and free elections. That's what everybody wants. I hope that both Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Green Party, and any other party can agree that elections should be fair and they should be free.
Yeah. Well, we have to take a break. We're going to continue our conversation on the other side with David Paul Blumenshine, who was at the executive committee meeting last night being questioned, really grilled. Do you live here? Yes, I do. Were you antagonistic at doors? Well, I was door knocking and I was running for office. One thing that I wanted to ask you about was, they had mentioned that you lost previous elections.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. Why did they question you on your previous campaigns and your failures?
That was the first question out of the gate. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about that question next. Good morning. Hey, folks, this is the Morning Buzz and the art of the failure. The art of failure. And, a lot of people don't know this, and I've mentioned this before on my Conservative Cat show. You can check it out Saturdays from 5 to 6. David's mentioned it on his show, the DPP show, Sundays from 1 to 3. You can subscribe to us both on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Check it out. David joins me in studio this morning, and last night, I'm just going to play it right out the gate here. Last night, there was an executive committee. The McLean County Board was grilling David on, his credentials, his qualifications for this appointment to the seat. Now, Chad Burke, Randy Knapp, and then this Cat Woods,
Yep.
who I'm going to get to here in just a second. I knew it was this woman. I found her on social media, saw that she donated to Black Trans Lives Matter organizations. She's a total lefty. Which I find odd that she's running as a Republican, because it has to be filled as a Republican, this appointment that has been left, this vacant seat in District 5 by John McIntyre, who abruptly resigned. But this was the meeting last night. I'll play this because this is Leah Klein asking you about your failed attempts at holding office, getting elected to office, right, David?
Yeah, because you're not allowed to run for office, especially a Republican primary, and not succeed and be qualified any longer. Because Abraham Lincoln, he obviously only ran for office, a gazillion times and failed.
Well, that's what we've mentioned on our shows, is that Abraham Lincoln, the land of Lincoln, Illinois, is the place where the guy failed all the way up to the presidency and was the guy who signed the Emancipation Proclamation and has done the best thing I think that this country has ever seen, which was ending slavery as a Republican.
One of the greatest presidents of all time, without question.
Yeah, he's on our license plate. Damn it!
Because, there will be the Lincoln
on the $5 bill.
The Republican Party here in McLean County will be hosting the Lincoln Reagan dinner on October 27th. It starts at 6 o'clock promptly, and you can get your tickets out at the McLean County Republican site. They will shut ticket sales off on the 23rd. So definitely, if you'd like to be part of that, our very own Kat Peterson and Ty Smith will be hosting the evening, and the featured speaker will be Lisa Holder-White. That is she is a Illinois Supreme Court justice. She's over 41 counties, and she's going to tell a little bit about her plight and some of the failures she experienced to rise to the level of Supreme Court justice in Illinois.
So let's take a listen to Leah Klein and her question, David.
Okay, very good.
Let's entertain it.
Thank you for being with us today. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about this. You've mentioned it today. It's also in your summary of qualifications that you have run for the 105th, state representative. And part of the job of the McLean County Board is to try to intuit who is the proper person to replace a member on the board, to understand the district and who would be an appropriate replacement given a member's election, right? And we had John McIntyre for many, many years, and his political affiliations, his political views are relatively clear to us, those of us who know him. And as you have run multiple times, we know yours as well. And so I want to go back to that, and not to, needle too much, but in 2018 and 2020, you ran for the 105th. And in 2021, you ran for the Normal Town Council. And of course, in all three cases, you did not win those elections. And I guess I'd like to hear from you about why you think the county board should appoint you, given that we've had three examples of you being up for election and you haven't been elected. So what is your case for being appointed when the voters didn't do so themselves?
Well, let's see. Does the clock run? So I think you're also aware of who I ran against. I ran against what I would consider a retail politician, one of the best. No one does it better than Dan Brady. In fact, some people say that no meeting can be conducted without Dan Brady being present. So that was an uphill climb, but the reason I ran against Dan Brady was very clear. Our state was in trouble, and it continues to be in trouble. And that's not a reflection on anyone that takes on an incumbent in a race. That just surely means that there are problems. Can they be fixed? One of the things I ran on was term limits. I believe wholeheartedly that no representative should hold office for years and years and years and years, to quote a Dan Hubbard song, because that's not representation, I believe. And I think that's clear now, what we see not only at the federal level, but at the state level. Lobbyists have a great influence over candidates. They also have a great influence over elections. As a grassroots candidate, not very well funded, I think I did pretty well without any prior experience. I had 25%. That means I was 25% away plus one vote. Second election, I got 38%. That means I was 12% away. So I gained 13%. That means the third election would have been a good chance. As far as the town.
So, David,
So it's you know, it's interesting. The questioning is like no one voted for you.
no one voted for you. So why are you trying to?
So in the town of Normal race, I didn't even get to this. In whatever had happened by the end of the night, there were news outlets that were announcing that I was the winner in the council race, just like Mark Tiratilli. Unfortunately, there was a mix-up in
a dump of vote by mail ballots.
And they calculated those after the declaring that 100% precincts were reporting. And yes, Kathy Michael had made a statement and she had put out an email to that effect. They have changed the way they've done that. But so I was very close to winning that council seat. And ultimately, the questioning is, it's almost like democracy. I believe that a lot of people think that it's majority rule, and it's not. It's we're a constitutional republic. We're a representative republic. Even if you get 38% of the vote to somebody, you still have 38% of the people voted for you. They have a voice. They have a legal right.
Well, and I love what you say later in the clip there is, look, are you people without setbacks, without failure?
Yeah.
How could you point a finger at me and say you're a failure? Look, Leah Klein, honey, you got three fingers pointing back at you. I'm sure you failed at something.
Everyone does. I mean,
because we're humans.
That was the interesting part about it. It's that sense of that I'm above everything, you know, that
tale as old as time.
That's right.
Yeah, and they did it to Lincoln. Listen to this.
Yes.
Lincoln defeated for the state legislature in 1832, failed in business 1833, elected to state legislature in 1834. So he finally got to the state legislature. Sweetheart died in 1835. He had a nervous breakdown in 1836, defeated for speakership in 1838, defeated for the nomination for Congress in 1843, elected to Congress in 1846, lost the renomination in 1848, rejected for land officer in 1849, defeated for U.S. Senate in 1854, defeated for the nomination of vice president in 1856, defeated for U.S. Senate in 1858, and then eventually he was elected to presidency in 1860. Okay, so that
he was so unqualified.
Yeah. He was so unqualified. Well, what is it? Jesus comes for the 99. 12 people were so unqualified. These were disciples of Jesus, right?
Yeah.
So unqualified. God turned around, used them for good. She doesn't get that.
Well, I mean,
she doesn't get that the unqualified.
Those folks would never be selected, right? And here it is that we live in a land of the free, the home of the brave, you know, and liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We've got to garner that and understand that this contentious way of trying to run government, it's pretty simple. It's about the people. It's about fulfilling the needs. And that's what I hope to bring to this county as I continue to process as long as I live here in McLean County, is we've got to truly foster a sense of camaraderie and inclusion and diversity and all those things that we hear as pop culture words now, because it's meaningful. that we do that. If we just want to go about attacking each other, what's ever going to get accomplished?
On the other side, this is the Morning Buzz. We're going to wrap up the show, David and I. Good morning, folks. This is the Morning Buzz. And real quick, before we end the show, I wanted to bring this up. Shame on these progressive state legislators in the state. David, you mentioned last night at the executive committee meeting for the McLean County Board that the state is in trouble. Yeah. It is in trouble because look at this. I mean, this statement, and I read the statement. They called for de-escalation and peace, and they talked about how the Palestinians have been denied basic human rights. It's this victim narrative that's very dangerous and has led to terrorist organizations like Hamas forming. And we have state legislators, LaShawn Ford. We actually have Carol Amons. Carol Amons, I believe, represents Champaign. LaShawn Ford, I was actually inquiring his office. They never got back to me because I was pretty sure that he was, and others have been trying to make the Lincoln College into an immigrant facility to house illegal immigrants. I haven't confirmed that yet. I contacted LaShawn Ford's office to try to find out if he was behind that. But they never got back to me, or if they're planning on using that facility to house illegal immigrants. But all the same actors, right? Chewy Garcia, right? They're coming out and they're saying that Palestinian deaths, these Hamas terrorists, them dying and they're equating it to the Israeli citizens dying.
This isn't about the Palestinian people. This is about savage terrorists, the Hamas. They act as if this is about the people of Palestine. Most of the people of Palestine are just trying to survive and exist every day. Let's target the savages. If you support these savages, and that's what they are, then I have no words for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's going to end our show here today. David, thanks so much for coming in, and thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe to David Paul Blumenshine, the DPB show. And folks, I recommend you sign up for public comment for the Thursday meeting. That's this week, the McLean County Board meeting, and speak out for my good friend David, and recommend to the council or to the county board that, hey, I think David would make a great choice. I recommend you go and sign up for public comment. You guys have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. I love you.